Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma. I am joined here by my good colleague, pal, and friend of one, Mr. Brian E. Roach. Brian, how's it going?
It's a lovely day. It's 10 million degrees. The sun has scorched the earth to a barren husk, and yet we survive.
I think I've mentioned this before. I don't know if you were much of an original Nintendo player, Super Mario 3, and they had that level with the sun that would chase you in the desert, and it would float around, and yeah. That's where we're at right now. The sun is trying to kill us all. So I saw that in a meme, and that's always stuck with me. So we're going to be kind of brief and to the point with this because we have really been broken records with Aaron Rodgers. But before we start, apologies in advance. We've gotten some technical issues, I think, squared away with the show finally. Like, there's been some audio issues and all new equipment and stuff on my end, and then Brian may have some other issues because he has a new dog that's trying to get coexist in a new environment. So apologies in advance.
she may get a little barky.
Little Barky, is that what we said? That's a good rap name, actually. Little Barky.
They call me Little Barky. Yo yo yo.
Yeah, I don't think that it's mumble rap now, Brian. It's no longer. It's not the hip hop that we grew up.
So it's like,
well, maybe one of us is something like that. Okay, if we hadn't turned everybody off already, what can we say?
Mumble rap.
So from our perspective, we've talked about Aaron Rodgers signing, pros and cons. Did he have a better team with the Jets last year than what he's going to have now? I have a little more of a twist on this from things that I've been listening to, over the last day or so. He was just on Pat McAfee. The very big well, of course, the other news too. We had big news. Did you know about the big news? Steelers had a big signing, huge signing. You don't typically get long snapper news this time of the year. So
that's hey, forget it. Instead of does Aaron Rodgers elevate, it's does the new long snapper elevate?
I was actually trying to look up his name. He was with the Patriots last year. Is it official? It's not on the official waiver. It's not on the official wire yet. It was like Addington or something like that. But anyways, yeah, long snapper news, like really, really big. Sorry, folks. That's about all that's been going on.
Thank you very much. Have a good night. We'll be here all week.
Yeah, don't forget to try the veal. Tucker Addington, that's who it was. Who was with the Patriots. Him. So, yeah, I don't know. My cousin has this strange thing with like Christian Kuntz going on, and I know that might sound weird just on the onset, but it's like
it does sound a little weird.
If he's in the giant eagle or the giant eagle. And just randomly shopping in the Pittsburgh area, he's bumped into this guy just randomly, like about a half dozen or so times over the last year or two. That how many people would spot Christian Kuntz and know who it is in public? Let alone you probably don't even know who he is on the football field. Like, right? It's like off the top of your head, what number does Christian Kuntz wear? Yeah, well, I'm cheating right now. Actually, I'm trying to look. 46. 46.
Oh man, I was going to be one off. I was actually going to say 47, but then I realized that was wrong because I know who wears 47, and so then I was like, well, I think it's a 40 though.
Yeah. So, anyways, my friend,
Let me just say this.
Okay.
I don't want anybody named Tucker on the team. Can we just not? I don't want any Tuckers. Tucker is a name that annoys me. I don't want. I have bad experiences with people named Tucker.
Okay, probably I'm not going to go there either. More than likely, so
it's a good idea not to go there.
Well, back on the Aaron Rodgers stuff. Well, like I said, we've beaten a dead horse some, but this could be a different perspective because of what he said on Pat McAfee. Basically, he said, he could picture this seeing his last year in the NFL, right? So it begs to wonder, or there's a lot of questions here. why did you come back? It took him forever to sign. For, if you were going to commit to the team, a lot of people said, oh, well, he had a handshake agreement. Well, those aren't necessarily binding. You know what I mean? That doesn't guarantee anything. And it took him forever. Whatever else he had going on in his life, we speculated maybe a sick friend, marriage, all these other things have surfaced, right? And then finally makes his decision. He comes, he's there at minicamp, and he's been working with DK Metcalf in the offseason. And you thought it was pretty much going to happen, 6 hours or so at the Steelers facilities, pleading his case as to, whether he should probably be involved in some off-season programs and everything else. But now he's here, now he's signed, and we've had, pros and cons. What's he do for this or that? But number one overall is the Steelers are probably in the same position next year, unless Aaron Rodgers were to win it all. So he decides he's going to play football, right? Aaron Glenn goes to the Jets, new head coach. They try and meet. They didn't get the right vibe with him. You've got all these other stories that surface, but lo and behold, him and Mike Tomlin apparently have mutual respect for one another, and he's going to come and he's going to play for the Steelers, and he's going to maybe solve some of their quarterback issues, maybe for one season. Where does that get the Steelers? Where do we see the Steelers? Because some people are saying, well, this makes them more of a contender than if they just had Mason Rudolph, Skylar Thompson, Will Howard. Well, maybe not. We don't know. Rodgers will be 42 in December, but does it make them a playoff team? Does it make them a favorite even in the AFC North or the AFC to even try and get as high as to a Super Bowl where all of Rodgers' incentives really kick in, a few mil here, a few mil there, if he plays in these postseason games and wins?
I mean, I give you the short answer, no. That's the short answer. The answer is no. Do they have a better chance of success in the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers versus what they had with just Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, and Skylar Thompson? Maybe, but I really still think the answer is no. You never want to say never, right? Because, I mean, who's the guy from the Ravens that won a Super Bowl that, was not a good quarterback?
Trent Dilfer. Trent Dilfer, and who was it?
No, somebody else.
There's a Johnson that was with the Buccaneers too. Was it Brad Johnson?
Brad Johnson was with the Buccaneers. I mean, you never say never, because what if the defense really goes crazy, right? What if it's impossible to score on this team and they win games 7-3 and 14-10, and manage to get through? The defense actually finally plays up to the money that we're spending on it. And they maintain that hold on teams like the Ravens and the Bills and the Chiefs and get there, right? There's scenarios where it could happen. But does it really make it more likely with Aaron Rodgers? No, I don't think it does.
Yeah. It's tough for me to say exactly where the bar is set for the Steelers here. You mentioned the teams they're chasing. Does it make them better than the Buffalo Bills? The Buffalo Bills are such an enigma to me. You've got Josh Allen. He can play, but he turns the ball over just as much as anybody else sometimes. There's always questions of, he has those kind of preseason jitters in September, and folks just aren't on the same page with him. Then by the time you get to December, it's like, holy cow, look at this guy. He's the MVP. And you have Lamar Jackson, the previous MVP, and both of these guys, actually, you could have flip-flopped them. Maybe Allen should have won the year before and Lamar should have won last year because their numbers were way better. It was almost like an apology maybe for Josh Allen from the previous year. But they're both in the same conference. And for the Steelers, the Ravens are in the same division. And that's not counting the team that's come out of the AFC and played in the last 3 Super Bowls, the Kansas City Chiefs. They have a pretty decent coach in Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and all, the whole bottle of wax. So there's already 3 teams that you've got to overcome with a 41 going on 42-year-old quarterback. I mean, it's a tough one for me just to put them up against those teams. Now, who else do you have to look at around the AFC? Well, look within the division. Cleveland Browns.
Bengals.
Yeah, the Bengals are. I don't
Cleveland,
know. than Cleveland. So maybe you could put them. It's hard to say that they'd be better on paper than the Baltimore Ravens right now. I don't have
the Bengals.
No, the Steelers. The Steelers.
Oh yeah, you can't say that right.
Yeah,
I agree.
Can't say that. Bengals, man, Joe Burrow has those same September, October jitters. They get off to another slow start. They'll be in the same spot they were in last season, trying to chase a playoff spot with a bad defense.
Here's the thing about the Bengals. You can't reliably assume that their defense will be as crappy as it was last year. But you can fairly well assume, with T. Higgins under contract, with Jamar Chase under contract, that their offense is going to be just as robust, right? So you would have to expect the Bengals have a better season this year than they had last year. I think that's just reliably, that's a reasonable expectation. It doesn't mean it'll happen, but it's a reasonable expectation. And if you assume their defense is slightly improved and their offense no longer has certain question marks about longevity and whether these guys are going to get paid and all those kinds of things, I mean, one of two things could happen. They could just go to sleep and say, hey, we don't care. We got our money. Or they could play lights out the same way they did last year, at which point I don't think that the Steelers are better than the Bengals right now. I think our defense is better. I don't think our offense is.
I think that's a tale of two sides to a coin there. It's going to be their offense can certainly put up points against anybody, as they should. They return just about everyone. Chase Brown, we'll see how he does coming back this season. He got hurt near the end of the year. Zach Moss, who's never been reliable health-wise, but still on the roster. They brought back Samjay Perine, who's always been a reliable kind of third down asset to them. You mentioned, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they're both making a ton of money. Yosavash has filled in very nicely. It really wasn't an AFC North comparison just yet, but they've got a couple questions. I think both of their guards are up in the air, Amarius Mims. So if they could protect Burrow and he doesn't get injured as well, but certainly there's an arms race there, because I think the Steelers defense against the Bengals offense will be the tail of the tape, rather than does Aaron Rodgers really move the needle that much. Don't forget, Russell Wilson dropped 40 plus points on the Bengals in their place. So will Aaron Rodgers do that same thing? I mean, those are the questions that I have. I think more or less what we're looking at with Aaron Rodgers, I don't even know that I'm looking within the AFC North. Obviously, he's going to have to compete against those teams, but when you think about his motivation to return to football and play with the Pittsburgh Steelers, it had to be maybe DK Metcalf, maybe it was Mike Tomlin, maybe it's a historic franchise. You know what I think it was, though? I think it was right where I was with my hunch of I thought he would go to the Vikings. He gets to play those teams. He gets some revenge games this year. He gets to play a division that he's been familiar with, although a few years removed, not exactly the same teams, but the Detroit Lions he gets to play. He gets to play the Bears, who he's owned for years. He gets a revenge match with the Green Bay Packers. And most importantly, right out the gate, he gets to face the New York Jets, a team that pretty much, tossed him to the curb. And I think that might be part of the motivation, or is also, too, I'll backtrack on this. You might not have known this, Brian, but here's a fun fact. Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers have never faced off against one another. So depending on how this Rodgers experiment goes,
maybe twice.
Yeah. So you're talking about TV contracts, money games. There's quite a few money games on this Steelers schedule. And then don't forget the Vikings. That game's in Ireland. So that's got a marquee, thing to it too. Yeah, buddy. We're going to talk about that at some point. Me and Brian are thinking, well, we're not just thinking. The wheels are in motion.
No.
The wheels are in motion.
The money's been spent, my friend. There's no thinking anymore. We will be on the Irish Isles.
Yes, I got to book my flight still. But we will be there. Maybe we'll be live from there, because that's quite. Yeah, why not? Quite the haul.
It'll be depending on when we decide to do a live show from there, it'll be early in the morning or in the afternoon.
Well, I don't know about live. We'll see. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So, and then the same thing, Aaron Rodgers and Joe Burrow. I think there's a rematch there. Let me see. often forget the things that I write sometimes over at steelcityunderground.com. That's the Thursday night game in Cincinnati on the short week that doesn't set the Steelers up pretty well. But it was an overtime game the last time those two faced off back in 2021. So these, he gets to face Burrow, he gets to face Lamar, he gets to face, all the NFC North opponents. I'm missing some of Jordan Love. He gets to face, with the Packers. So there's a lot of, Aaron Rodgers could shove it back in, someone's face. Whether or not he's going to be capable of doing so is, a limitation of maybe his age, his physical abilities. You mentioned lesser quarterbacks, but let's talk about some of the ones that have been veterans that signed. Kurt Warner with the Cardinals, and these guys were younger than Aaron Rodgers, right? But Tom Brady is a different beast. He's got
different animal.
He's got a whole jewelry drawer full of Super Bowl rings, but makes me vomit even saying that. But yes. Peyton Manning was a noodle arm by the time he got that championship with the Broncos. They had a very stellar year when he first got there, and he was coming off that neck injury and a year away from football. So Rodgers is over a year removed from the Achilles deal. It's not to say that he can't. Peyton was a little bit younger. He was 38, 39. Maybe something he hit 40. That. Maybe he did hit 40, but he was like right there. 40. Ben's age, but very few guys that are 40 or more. So I hate to bring that as a comparison, but a lot of people forget, even though that the Broncos, they had all those guys. They had Manny Sanders, they had Demaryius Thomas, they had Eric Decker there with them too, and but it was defense.
It
Von
was
Miller,
defense.
And they had to make that decision too, because remember they let Brock Osweiler go, and they didn't. And then Manning retired, and they've been up until last. Maybe they found their guy with Bo Nix, but they've been in purgatory too, finding quarterbacks. They've tried all the same things the Steelers did. Yeah,
I'm sure it was not that big of a concern to let Brock Osweiler go, but what did you hear about him after he left?
Well, he signed like a huge 3 or 4 year deal at the time, was $70-some million or whatever. That's why they gave Von Miller the contract over him. So you look at the way the Steelers are handling this. You have Aaron Rodgers saying this might be his last year. Where's Aaron Rodgers? What's his goal? If he wins a Super Bowl, does he hang it up on a high note like Peyton Manning did?
100% guaranteed. If he wins, I guarantee you that's a walk away. That's look. Jerome did it. There are very few people who have done it. Win and walk, right? When you get to this point in your career, 41 years old, if you walk away winning the Super Bowl, that is, I feel like that's it. That's the ultimate, curtain call for your career. I won and I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, what else is there to do now? What happens if he gets the Steelers finally, get the chip off their shoulder and they win a playoff game? Maybe they get to divisional. Maybe they get to the AFC Championship game. Does he feel like those are January games? And when we've mentioned the places that if the Steelers aren't better than the Ravens, the Bills, or the Chiefs, those are all aside from playing at home at Pittsburgh. Very cold weather climate kind of places. You're not going to be playing in any dome games on the road like New Orleans, Minnesota, Dallas.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the NFC has a lot of that. So that's kind of interesting to me, is where it ends there. And you're playing these games in January and you're feeling the cold, you're feeling the arthritis in your bones and everything. And do you come back if you just end up short? And how does that delay the Steelers' progression with their quarterbacks? And if Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back, is he really going to be that mentor, or is he going to be that teacher? Is he going to be the guy that a Mason Rudolph or a Will Howard learns from? Or do the Steelers just wipe the slate kind of again? I don't think they'll wipe the slate with Will Howard, but who's to say he ever gets a chance? I mean,
this is, from all reports, Aaron Rodgers is embracing the role of mentorship with Will Howard. Whether that's true or not, whether that's just a PR, I don't know. But reporting states that that's the case, and he seems to be embracing the idea of that role, because you know what? That's legacy, right? If he can impart wisdom to Will Howard, and Will Howard turns into a non-schlub, Like, that's a legacy statement for Aaron Rodgers. To go to your point, like, it depends on how it ends, right? Let's say they get to the playoffs and they make it to round 1 and bail out. Forget it. I think he's done. Get to get past the first round of playoff games, get to a divisional round game, and maybe just lose. Well, now there's some questions. Get to an AFC championship game. Let's say it ends on a field goal at the end of the game where you had that much of a like it could have gone either way. In those kinds of circumstances, like where it was like the taste of it was there, if you felt like you had the chance, I could see him lobbying to come back again, but that's all just imaginary bullcrap as far as I'm concerned. None of that's going to happen.
I don't know. There's quite a few folks that think that Rodgers improves this team to being a Super Bowl contender. You have to think that it's got to be in his mind. I mean, why else would he come back? Aside from opportunity, there weren't a lot of opportunities for him, but the ones that were there, like I said, Minnesota, they just won 14 games. And there's really nobody else standing in your way to go there and to take that starting role, really, unless they really wanted to go with McCarthy. And they were probably set to do that maybe last season, or at least play Darnold for a little bit. They weren't expecting Darnold to probably play, the full season. And then there's Pittsburgh. I mean, it was Pittsburgh, and he says it was Pittsburgh or nobody else. But why is that? Is it because he feels this is a roster that could win it all? He's got to get that stench off of him from the New York Jets stint. You don't want to end your career the way it did there. And there's just so many things. Oh, my goodness. They just had an interview with one of the guys, I think, from the front office or whatever. And it was talking about everything from coaches to players, like an unwillingness of Rodgers to throw the ball to Garrett Wilson, or checking out of plays that were handoffs to Braylon Allen or Breece Hall, just continually forcing it maybe to Devontae Adams, who I think also had some incentives in his contract. So some of that might not have been too far-fetched. Right. You can take care of your buddy there. But it's also, Rodgers has to get on the same page with these players. He's got to have the timing down. Just one small, hiccup in that. We saw it happen. We try to blame maybe Russell Wilson. You try and blame Justin Fields, but some of that stuff is clearly on, like George Pickens, for example. You saw him run a route short, run the wrong route, not go where the quarterback's expecting. How long does a quarterback have to throw the ball in the National Football League? When you are playing against the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns defenses, for example, with Myles Garrett, how long do you have to throw that ball? That ball has got to, you anticipate. That was one of the things that we really drug Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett for, was when Pickett first came out there, he was anticipating, but he was throwing it in the wrong spots. He was, seeing ghosts. And I liked that he was taking, that he had that aggression, but then it slowly turned into, this isn't a good thing. Now you're turning the ball over too much. But some of that, Aaron Rodgers is turning the ball over. Is he going to keep going back to that player? If that player is unreliable, if the player gives a little stutter step or trips or stumbles or button hooks and shouldn't button hook, or whatever might be the case, they're not where they're supposed to be, and you're a guy that's been around for 20 some years, you're probably going to, especially the dumpster fire that, they fired Robert Salah a month into the season and everything else. Could that happen again in Pittsburgh, though? And, I mean, it would be disastrous. I mean, we're talking about Mike Tomlin, a guy who hasn't had a losing season. And people say, well, there's whatever mediocrity, at least gets to that point. Yes, he does. No matter what cards he has to play, whatever's dealt, Mike Tomlin knows how to play his hands. And that should be, a hats off to him and his ability to coach. What happens if Aaron Rodgers goes rogue? Because last season, we were starting to hear those rumblings with Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson was not brought back.
Yeah, I do think this is a short-term relationship, man. This is a feel-good short-term relationship. This is a casual booty call. football version of the booty call for a season. That's what this is. It's like, hey, Aaron Rodgers, you got kind of that little magic. Let's see what we can do. Ooh ah, and it's a little booty call. At the end of the year, it's done. I think it's highly unlikely the Steelers have a desire to keep Aaron Rodgers more than a single season. I don't think it's likely Aaron Rodgers wants to play more than one more season. I think what he wants is the chance to try and go out on a high, as opposed to the shit show that happened in New York. I do think he wants the opportunity to potentially have a legacy with a quarterback like Will Howard. Whether Will Howard has the ability to give him that, I don't know. I do think that this is, these are the reasons that he decided to come here. I think he has they have a shot. The Steelers defense is good enough that every single season they have a shot, right? It really depends on whether injuries fall apart, how long they're on the field, whether the offense can play complementary football, all the things that haven't happened consistently, right? Over the past few seasons. You can't, you just can't. The unexpected happens, right? Mm-hmm. But the defense is solid enough, is good enough that any given season they could be on fire and take this team far into the postseason. And I think that is attractive to Aaron Rodgers at this point, because it gives him at least a shot, right? And it's not all on him, right? We just have to wait and see. I've stated multiple times, my expectations, very, very low. But it doesn't mean that there is zero chance all this stuff could happen. I just look at it like you've got a better chance of hitting a scratcher than Aaron Rodgers taking this team to the Super Bowl. Just doesn't mean it can't happen. It just means it's really not likely.
Does that mean you're not putting any money on the Steelers?
I don't bet. My money is my money. I don't give it to other people.
I love that, man. I was trying to look at, you made a good point. I was going to bring up Tom Brady because Brady winning the Super Bowl that he did, and some of the numbers that Brady, jeez, can you believe this though? Brady in 2021, 719 pass attempts and 733. He finished out his last two seasons, 34 games in the NFL, throwing for almost 1,450 throws. Holy cow, man. And was 45 years old. Those are like career highs. Tom was not throwing 700 passes, and Bruce Arians, man, I'll tell you. Anyways,
there you go.
Bruce Arians. But his first year there, 2020, and then he hung around. He didn't go out on top. He could have just been like, oh, you know what, New England, I showed you. I could do this without you. Everybody was wondering if he could. He was up there in age. New England kind of got that itch to move on. Now Robert Kraft is like, crying over spilled milk. These last 2 years were the worst in my 30 years of ownership or whatever. And it's like, it's a little bit of hyperbole. There were some really bad years in New England before Bill Belichick and Tom Brady.
Yes, there were.
But you know what? That's a good point too. Let me rewind real quick before I go to Tom Brady's in a parallel with the Steelers defense. You mentioned Will Howard and a legacy. What does it take for Will Howard to get on the field? Because when I think of somebody like Brock Purdy, they went for Trey Lance. He got hurt. If Trey Lance doesn't get hurt, Brock Purdy never sees the field. Then they had to drag Jimmy G back out there. They were already trying to move on from Jimmy G. They took Purdy as a Mr. Irrelevant. He went over some, like a Jason Stidham or somebody that was like that. I don't think it was Stidham. It was somebody else. Like, their name escapes me. But it was like, a guy that's very firmly like a QB3 on the roster. And if he doesn't have that opportunity where he's not looking over his shoulder, none of those guys were returning the rest of the season. I don't know that we ever know who Brock Purdy is. Now, that's also saying Kyle Shanahan and then all the offensive weapons that they had in San Francisco, a little bit different maybe than what Pittsburgh has. Arthur Smith, Mike Tomlin, and then you're talking basically DK Metcalf right now. So maybe a little bit different a situation. If Brock Purdy goes into Pittsburgh, he probably has the same career trajectory as a Mason Rudolph. Like Mason Rudolph still had to look over his shoulder. Big Ben's going to return. stuff like that. And then he got knocked out of games, broken clavicle at the end of that season, concussion, everything like that. So I think about that too with Will Howard. I'm like, what does it take to get that opportunity? And if you have it, are you going to let that go? Now, Tampa Bay defense, pulling up some names here, because Tom Brady didn't just join a team that didn't have players. They had a player who threw for 30 touchdowns, over 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions, Jameis Winston. He was losing them games. And that's what Tom Brady didn't do. But I'm not going to discount what Brady did either. 4,600 plus yards, 40 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers has 40 touchdowns in him. I don't know that the Arthur Smith offense is a 40 touchdown pass or 40 passing touchdown kind of offense. But
feels unlikely.
Yeah, feels a little unlikely. Feels like I think they would try and run the football if they can. But when you get to defense and you get to some of these players, Jason Pierre-Paul, you added some veterans too. Okay, so some people come along with the Brady effect. Devin White, when he was still playing pretty good, Shaq Barrett and Ndamukong Suh shows up there. Yep. They already had Antoine Winfield and William Golston, Jordan Whitehead, Vita Vea, Levante David. So they had some dudes on their defense. Carlton Davis was there, Sean Murphy Bunting. They had some players that were still young that are more household names now too, but they really had some nice drafts and a lot of talent that was there. So that's what you're kind of hoping that maybe an Aaron Rodgers can bring with the Steelers, just somebody who doesn't make those Jameis Winston kind of mistakes and sinks a team that I think's had some pretty good drafts. But the Steelers have been snake bitten. Troy Fautanu didn't get on the field much last year. Roman Wilson didn't get on the field much last year. And people are criticizing Omar Khan. You just got a quarterback for $13 million. You haven't been he hasn't sunk the ship with a big bad quarterback deal or shooting high for somebody in the draft that don't forget, Kenny Pickett was a Kevin Colbert pick. So we can't place that on Omar Khan as far as, failure or success. I think he's built some really nice teams really quietly, and he makes some really, intelligent trades with, how he got Joey Porter's pick, for example, trading away Chase Claypool, and just knowing when to pull the trigger at certain points, all the draft capital that they have, the guys that they've signed over the last couple of years, like Patrick Queen, and now you might have Aaron Rodgers here just to kind of solidify, like I said, give Mike Tomlin the best hand dealt that he can play with. So I do see some parallels there with Tampa Bay with Aaron Rodgers. The thing is, Aaron Rodgers' stats last year weren't quite where I think Brady left off in New England. Brady had over 4,000 yards, but he was a little down. 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's never been a big interception kind of guy. He only took 27 sacks. Aaron Rodgers last year with the Jets, just shy of 3,900 yards passing, 28 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, but the 40 sacks. That's still an upgrade, I think. It tracked some with Russell Wilson's numbers, but as we look into the future, if Aaron Rodgers is able to bring that to Pittsburgh, I think that's complimentary football. They just can't go 3 and out, I think, is the biggest thing over the last few years. Sustain some damn drives. But I don't see Aaron throwing 584 passes in Arthur Smith's offense in 17 games either.
But there's been a couple issues that, I don't think we addressed. Yes, the Steelers defense has been good, but they've been able to get worn down. Why? Look, Larry Ogunjobi was not a top tier talent during his time here. He was good, but he wasn't blowing things up, right? His production was minimal. So you had half the line, half of that front between him, Keanu, and Cam, or whoever else was in there, was not as solid as you'd like it to be. Keanu's still learning. Mm-hmm. TJ has been hurt during the second half of seasons. I think they're in a better position right now. You've got Nick Herbig, you got Alex Highsmith, you got Jack Sawyer, and you got TJ. That's a better cycle than they've had, depending on how Jack Sawyer comes around. And you and I have been able to watch Jack Sawyer for 4 years, right? The one thing you can say about Jack Sawyer, he has very TJ Watt-like motor, right?
Yes,
may
non-stop.
Not always win on the first move, but he will never stop, ever. And it's that kind of stuff that maybe keeps TJ healthy for the whole season. Because I'm just going to tell you, we've all said it multiple times. TJ is a game wrecker and a changer if he's healthy. When he's not healthy, when he's not 100%, he's not the same guy, right? He's not the same player. So you need that. And I think if those changes that they've made, adding Harmon, adding Sawyer, the other changes that they have on defense, I think the safety was a great addition and extension.
Yeah,
right?
We didn't talk about that at all. That's a great pick. I thought Deshaun Elliott was excellent last year, and it certainly showed. He was
fantastic
when he wasn't there against like the Eagles and maybe the Chiefs as well. He missed a game or two or was banged up too. It showed. It was night and day.
Yeah, I mean the risk point. I think Darius Slay is better. Who was the old dude that we had a little while ago?
Well, he wasn't too old, but Dante Jackson. He was in his
no, not that old dude. The old dude before that.
Patrick Peterson. Yeah,
Patrick Peterson. That old dude.
That old dude.
I think Darius Slay has more in him than Patrick Peterson had when he came. All right. The question really is Joey Porter going to have a bounce? I don't want to even say bounce back. He didn't have a great year last year. He didn't have a horrible year last year. But is he going to continue to progress, or is Joey Porter who Joey Porter is right now, right? If he elevates his game again, I think Darius Slay helps out. I think all of a sudden, all the pieces are there, provided they can avoid the bug. I think they have a tremendous core of inside linebackers right now. So, that defense can be a very scary defense if everything is happy path and goes to plan, right? Lose a couple pieces and the depth is not going to be there to maintain, right? So that's why I said you don't want to say it can't happen, because it can, because the defense can be good enough to make all this work. But will they be? That's for the season to let us find out about.
Yeah, and all the things you said. Slay's addition definitely something to help mentor Porter, but there's one more set of intangibles to talk about, and that's Aaron Rodgers goes on the Pat McAfee show. He's like a regular guest. Like
that's a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
I'm just telling you.
it's not being the host of Jeopardy or anything like that right now. So there's some of those things that do make me wonder about the ego, the individual, just how he fits into this. And Mike Tomlin, hopefully there's the mutual respect. Mike Tomlin has kept the lid on some volatile personalities over the years, so we'll leave it at that. We may not have anything else to say about Mr. Rodgers until we get to training camp about 1 month away from now, about 4 weeks from now. So looking forward to that. And just making some more travel plans, man, hopefully. So I'm trying to you've got your stuff all set up. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm getting out there. Yeah, you got it a little easier to me. Like otherwise, let's put it this way: I have no intention of doing a 35-hour trip to Ireland on the way back from Ireland.
No, that's 2 layovers.
Oh, it's crazy. It was like a 2-day set of legs on the trip, and I'm just
screw that nonsense.
So figuring that out. But folks, that's an aside. We're going to talk about, I think, may even have a guest, Brian. You may get bumped. You almost got bumped yesterday, actually, because we were going to do a show, and then Mr. Rodgers decided he was going to talk, and then we went for this. But talk about maybe some travel tips, some you're coming to a Steelers game kind of tips, and things that we've experienced over the years of traveling to games, both at home and away, and stuff like that. So let us know if you have some interest in that. I know somebody that's chomping on the bit to be on the show, believe it or not, is Heather, and you always see her picture back here, and I'm like, she's not the biggest football knowledge person, but if you would like somebody that has a little bit of a different outside the box opinion on some of this, she came right out the gate. There was something that I forgot, like one of these talking heads, we were listening to something, radio or otherwise, and she just blurted out. She was like, well, he's no longer with the Steelers, so why do they care? And I just thought that was pretty great. So Brian, might get a prettier face on here for just one show during the summer to fill the airwaves, as we have no other news or anything to talk about. I'm going to pick her brain.
What are you talking about? You're still going to be on.
Well, All boats rise with the tide, my friend. So, folks, let us know what you might want us to talk about. Another one that always comes up frequently is watching games, particularly if you're not in a Pittsburgh Steelers broadcast area. Other than that, we're going to leave it at that for this show. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, leave a rating or review wherever you may be watching or listening. If you're watching on YouTube, and next day on one of our Spotify feeds that we do have a video feed, and we also have a audio one, so subscribe to the appropriate one where necessary. My name's Joe. Thank you once again to my dude, Mr. Brian E. Roach, for joining us today. Brian, any last thoughts?
I don't want to talk about Aaron Rodgers anymore.
Man, he's the gift that keeps on giving, though. He's kind of like Antonio Brown that one year. No, let's no. You know what? No, slap that right out of your mouth. I don't know. Let's not let it get that right. We don't need that level of crazy and that level of insanity. Like, he can be a little bit of a drama, but no, not that level of drama. You know, that is my request of Mr. Rodgers. Mr. Rodgers, don't be Mr. Big Checks. Just don't be that guy, and I'll be content. Yeah. Wow. And he still ends up making headlines somehow, but we'll leave it at that. Folks, until next time, my name's Joe. His name's Brian. We encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.